Well, hello, I'm Tori Cooke and welcome to the Pandora Vlog Series. This vlog is about opening the box on the complex and often challenging work that we do in our work with men using family violence. Each episode will explore key practice issues, share reflections from the field, and highlight approaches that help keep victim survivors safe while inviting men into meaningful change. I'm really glad that you're here to be part of these conversations. Today, it's my delight to introduce Mark Vincent into an amazing conversation. Mark has worked in the family violence response sector in Victoria for the past 16 years. Mark moved from private business into human services via a mature age student pathway, completing his studies and then moving into volunteer telephone counselling with No to Violence while still running a business. Over time, Mark took on the role as service manager and then moved across to lead as the national coordinator for the Brief Intervention Service, which continues to run as a voluntary multi-session telephone counselling service. He has just completed a contract working with men in the construction sector. Very interesting, with Jesuit Social Services delivering the Manbox research and unpacking Manbox sessions. Mark is also about to embark on his first overseas trip to Japan in October. Just to quote Mark, the learning has never stopped. The questions do not end. The leaning into the words and stories of women is essential and have had a profound effect on him, but there is still so much to do. So, welcome, Mark. It's absolutely wonderful to have you in our vlog today. And I'd like to just firstly ask you, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can hold men accountable for their use of violence while still engaging them in ways that keep the door open for growth and change. What have you found works in your practice in working with men?
Thanks, Tori. Pleasure to be here. Have found that it has really come from a position of personal reflection and challenge. So doing the work has been really from a place of doing the work inside on myself, being sure of the and safe in the context of working with men, but also learning from those who have done that. So being able to be aware of what is expected in that space. So there's a thing that I would say about having done the preparation, so that my confidence level and my self-awareness of issues around being a male and having the entitlement privilege that has been present and probably invisible for a large part of my early life, was coupled with coming into working with men and holding a very strong sense of judgment. So working on myself to become non-judgmental and then being able to have conversations that opened up someone to the same questions and challenges that I experienced in being a male and what that meant to change. What does the change journey look like? Holding men accountable was something that initially I found to be, a great, I would say, something that not in a good way, was just saying, there, I told you so, and I'm better than you. So this element of going, I'm a different male and you need to follow my example. Role modelling is very important. So that sense of going, how I had to learn, and there was a lot of chipping away at edges and breaking down barriers within myself to be able to then have conversations that meant I was talking to the person who I needed to talk to. I wasn't trying to impress. So being able to be non-judgmental, being able to make myself available and being able to listen very actively. So that was probably the thing that was able to assist me to bring an accountability and a responsibility taking into the conversation with men. And then doing group work, which is very different to doing individual therapy work, was the sort of thing of going, the men within the group were often a very significant part of the challenge and change that was required for someone to take those first initial steps. So I found that I haven't done much individual practice, so working within the MBC Men's Behaviour Change format was one that I found I learned enormously from, in terms of seeing myself in those men and also understanding that how I could prompt and 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 nudge someone towards maybe reflecting on how they are, and what
Yeah.
they might need to do to improve the lot of others and to support the women and children around their life, but also to say you can do this. So to encourage that change mentality. So getting into their head, getting into their body, understanding that they weren't fully aware at times of what was going on for them. And
Yeah.
so acknowledging that, and not diminishing any sense of going, this is who you are and this is where you are. So I'm meeting you where you're at, and being very clear in the boundaries that were necessary to have to be able to do the work.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to really kind of focus in on in what I've heard you say is that the group work is really important. That actually working with men in a group is can profoundly provide a mirror back to each man, and
Mm,
particularly where he brings forward that resistance,
mm,
and also those smoke screens, that denial,
yes.
minimization, deflection. Um, so what were some of the things as a practitioner that you found really helpful in, I guess, creating an environment in a group that really promoted men calling in each other to change work? What were some of the things that, as a practitioner, enabled you to be able to create that environment?
I think setting up the positioning of having a very good base understanding. The training was critical in understanding how men function or how groups function, understanding the lessons that you learned, like you're talking about the blame, the justification. There were very, very many simple messages that came out in a group setting that were able to be um, challenged. So
Yeah.
the the tools that I needed were provided through training. So I would say that this is not just anyone's work. It really is a case of you have to do the work, and then you have to have people that are professionally adequate to be able to provide you with the training and methodologies as to how you go about and do the work. The things that were helpful were to open up spaces, to be able to listen to and appropriately manage conversations, and to allow things of difference to be in that space that would then be managed and facilitated through. So to respectfully engage or disengage in conversations, to work with a female co-facilitator was incredibly important, and to demonstrate that role modeling of how a male and a female can interact was so vital. It was such a common reference point to say, I've never seen a man and a woman talk like that. I've never seen
Wow.
that experience of someone not surrendering, but deferring to other and allowing space for. So those conversations, even in the group setting, were incredibly important to be able to demonstrate it is possible. There is another way. So we had particular models that we were using and particular ways of communicating. Some of those things were really of most influence were those things where people saw and were able to ask questions, and they would come to you afterwards and sort of make comment about, well, how do you do that? It's like
Yeah.
they didn't have the skills. As men, they were not socialized, trained, or educated to respectfully engage with someone. They just learnt a methodology and a way of being that was power over. So I think
Mm.
you have a strong conversation that sets boundaries and then allows someone to come in and go, can I test that? Can I do that? And then I'm not sure. So really working with ambiguity and doubt is really part of that question. But someone, as a male, entitled male, I don't really want to express to you anyone that I feel doubt or that I have insecurities or questions. So it's not a position for a male. So it's really having those tools to be able to encourage those conversations that bring forward
Mhm.
maybe this capacity of thinking that things can be different.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would be, so what as I'm listening to you, there's so many different kind of
Yes,
intricacies in the
yes,
success of a group. And sometimes, I'll often talk about the magic that happens
yes.
when you've got a good program, you've got two facilitators that have done really good preparation. There's
Yes.
been an environment that's been created that that enables that sense of safety to trial and test
Yes.
new behaviours, or
Yeah.
or to be safely heard in
Mm.
saying, in saying the same old kind of strategic narrative, but to actually have
Mm.
that heard in a really different way. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I'll often say in the micro skills when working with men training is the fundamental importance of intake and assessment
Mm.
in setting up all of the parameters of how the group is going to work.
Mm.
And particularly around saying it's so important to understand that this is a place where you will feel discomfort,
Yes.
and
Yes.
but that will be but it is a safe environment to feel that discomfort,
Yeah.
and that when we give guys a heads up that this is a program that's all about teaching
Mm.
and skill building, and what we're really doing is building an internal framework for each man
Mm.
around his own self insight. So when we think about
Yes.
sustainable change over time, that he becomes curious and committed to
Mm.
his own, change work process. What would be
Definitely.
some of your thoughts around that in terms of what I've just talked about?
Well, other than agreeing completely, you've summarised so many parts of the whole um, practice. Um, I don't know that there's anything specifically that more than what I can than what you have brought. I think the doing the work, the being involved in the work, being
Yeah.
able to support those change narratives in the conversations that you have, and
Mm,
also being open to appropriately hold an accountability as to where the lines are, where this conversation goes. There are so many things that are inappropriate in the context of coming in and doing groups with men and the locker room humour and all sorts of things. But you work your
of
way through
course.
that,
Yeah.
and you allow someone to be able to say, look, I learned about this when I was 13. And you're going, so are you open to hearing how it could be done differently? Um, there is this thing of going, the person's willingness to engage authentically with the conversation is critical. So oftentimes you will be saying that someone's not ready. And when you're saying with the
Yeah.
intake and triaging process is really to give the best opportunity for someone who's in a space to change, to shift. And I'm probably more inclined to use the word shift than change, but shift
Mm,
towards more appropriate um, ways of being, but also they need techniques. And I think there was a little while there where there was a conflict between how do you provide strategies? Are men just going to use those to,
yeah.
you know, camouflage their behaviour? Well,
Yeah.
there is elements of that. With part of the work was around partner contact and having a support worker that's working with the family. The intel that you would get from that is really critical in this work. That's
Mm,
where the voice of women and children play such an important part, is to hear what's going on, not just to say in my experience of a man in a group that this is actually their learning.
yeah.
I would never put myself in that position to say we would never provide an assessment and a final summary that says he has changed. There was elements of this where it's an ongoing thing, and I think that was part of the learning was that this journey does not stop. And if you are engaged in it authentically, you will see the benefits of that, but they will primarily come
Mm,
from maybe something around the ideas that your sense of being a male, masculine traits, masculine lessons of how to be will be significantly challenged. And that may be something you support, and it may be something that you grapple with. But like you're saying, it's an uncomfortable but safe space, and the conversations are critical, which means men hearing other men talk, men being informed of how a woman hears or sees a perspective on something that is different, and
mm,
um, it's not challenging their own sense of identity, but they do need to grow out of. I mean, I do remember quite often the conversation would be around, I think it's about time you grew up, was to accept some level of responsibility. So through that change process we would be able to provide tools and techniques and strategies that we would then reinforce by coming back and saying, how did that go? What did your partner think? What impact was that? And some men coming back after a period of time saying, you know what, my kid talked to me from the back of the car. I'm only seeing her twice a week or twice a month, but she's never actually talked to me.
Wow.
There's elements of this, which is to say, when someone can use something to challenge their way of being and then they move to another place, there is going to be insecurity and doubt and a bit of confusion. But when they do it and practice it and reinforce that, a bit like the neural pathways, they do get stronger, and there is that capacity to say, well, then you may then have to leave a place where you have been comfortable. And then you move into this place where someone is saying, telling you from being in a place of safety, I feel safe with you. And that's part of the learning that I think I found to be of most value was this has been the way of your life, and then how do you now understand it in terms of the impact on others?
Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? This, as we draw to a close, what I'm really hearing is both the complexity of the work, but also its simplicity, that,
Yeah,
that this kind of, that building of a self-reflection insight to promote that shift for him.
yeah,
And I like that, the way you've used that language, that's really important. But also the incredible importance of creating a safe space for a group of people who are not used to being in that space.
yes,
And that
yeah,
requires, not only that self-examination as practitioners, but also training and an ongoing training. And I'm such a big fan of training it to build skill and to build knowledge, but also that critical self-reflection in ourselves.
yes,
We always have to model what it is that we really want the men to learn. Mark,
yeah,
as we draw to a close, I feel like we could have had this conversation for another hour, and I might invite you back for another vlog if that's okay.
pleasure.
Because it's just been, you've just described this, this incredible process so beautifully. And what I'm hearing
Thank you.
underneath that is this deep experience of both your life, but
Yeah,
also the lives of the men that you've been able to work with. So
yes,
thank you for your service over the last 16 years, and of course, the work ahead.
yeah,
Um, and over to our Pandora subscribers, thank you for joining me for this episode, the August vlog series. These conversations are about opening the box on the real challenges and opportunities in family and domestic violence work, from engaging men using violence to supporting safer, more accountable communities. If today's discussion sparked reflection or gave you a new perspective, let's keep this conversation going with your colleagues, your teams, and your communities. And you can find more resources, training, and updates through Pandora Project's website. And of course, I would be delighted to hear your thoughts. So please connect, comment, or share your reflections through our monthly newsletter. Thank you.
thank you.